Good morning. This is Ron Parks from Mindwise, Substack, talking to a beautiful and very advanced and smart for his age, but just an interesting journey he's had with some of his in depth work influenced me with my health program. So I want to have him introduce himself with this little bit about his journey and where he is now. And also, he's developed, I think, a amazing, helpful program that I want him to talk about the Daily Wellness Empowerment Program, DWEP, and CSM. So go ahead, Promise.
Paul, this is my civil name. So to make a long story short, when I was a teenager, I went through psychosis and I asked my psychiatrist, how can I take better care of myself? And he didn't know. So I said to find the answer for myself. I started joining a martial arts club. And then I found out about my teacher's teaching on mindfulness, meditation, ethical living, and so on. At age 19, I decided to become a Buddhist monk. That's when I received this name Promise, and was a Buddhist monk for 16 years, during which I kept researching everything I could on wellness, mental health, physical health. So I learned a lot, especially from the fields of positive psychology, lifestyle medicine, and of course, the teachings of the Buddha and teachings of my teacher. And in my monastic life, I created two programs, which you just mentioned. The first is the Daily Wellness Empowerment Program, or DWEP, Daily Wellness Empowerment Program. And it's a comprehensive wellness program for mental and physical health. And what's so special about this program is that all of its practices are do it yourself, simple, free, backed up by science, and holistically effective. Meaning, for a wellness practice to enter the program, he has to meet all of these five criteria. And so maybe later during the interview, we'll talk more in depth about the exact content of this program. But that's basically the first program I put together. And the second one is Central Story Training, or CST. And this is my safe and effective meditation system for the modern mind. So it's all about meditation, those higher and higher states of well being, but without the fluff, without the Sanskrit, and just focused on simplicity and efficacy for people today. And of course, it's rooted in the original teachings of the Buddha, but the way it's presented, it's totally new and really made for today's world.
There's in many parts of the world, there's a lot of interest in mindfulness and meditation, and a lot of it, of course, comes from Vipassana meditation. So you could probably explain that much better, of where being mindful, aware meditation, and even a little bit about Vipassana. I saw in one of your articles you had a condensed version of Vipassana.
Yes. So meditation is a therapeutic training of our attention. Again, meditation is a therapeutic training of our attention. So when brain is left in its default mode network, which as its name indicates, is what happens. We don't pay attention to anything in particular. We're just on autopilot. We're just in our default mode. We ruminate a lot about the past. We project ourselves in the future. We worry about what other people think about us, or we judge ourselves. It might sound familiar to some of your audience. We all have this, it's perfectly normal. And according to neuroscientists, these are most likely survival mechanisms. So we ruminate on the past so that we can learn from our experience. We judge ourselves, we worry about what other people think about us because we are super social species and we need the group to survive. And then
We
we try to predict the future, control the future so that we can improve our chances of survival. And there is actually important research paper on this default mode network written by, I think it's Harvard's scientist. It's called A Wandering Mind is an Unhappy Mind, published in the journal Science. And the title says it all. A wandering mind is an unhappy mind. So when we leave our brain, our nervous system in its default mode network with all of this compulsive thinking, past, future, judgments, and so on, we tend to suffer a lot. Because what is trying to help us survive is not necessarily what makes us happy. And the paper concludes, and I quote, the ability to think about what is not happening is a cognitive achievement that comes at an emotional cost. It's a cognitive achievement. Yes, we are almost, and we take great pride in our intellect, but when it's out of control, it tends to bully us, it tends to make us suffer more than it helps us. So that's why it's so important to train this capacity of being more present, more with our direct senses, with our mind open and light, as opposed to having our consciousness contracted, trying to control everything compulsively, trying to think about the past, the future. We are much, much, much happier with our mind open, light, allowing things to flow, allowing things to be without too many preferences, just there, awake, and also loving, because that's a state in which we seek less for happiness and therefore we are happier. That's the funny thing.
just insert here. I guess my big learning is it's all about balance. A lot of these functionings of the mind are very relevant and perhaps essential in certain types of things and situations. But if it's not balanced, and I think the Buddha talked about the middle road factor to find balance. An example of being out of balance is everything that gets labeled. It has a label of something that's not optimal. Medicine has all kinds of labels, and I always or try to teach people to get beyond those. But the best balancing factor, or getting whole again, I should say, would be things like you could work towards with some of the programs that he set up, which are trying to make them accessible to everybody. But I want to get back to when you were describing Vipassana, you were saying it's about discernment, but
Yeah,
it's actually involves techniques as well to get the brain to be more balanced, to bring in all the areas that makes a person and productive, and versus being constricted down in a
yeah,
left brain intellectual contriving
yeah.
organizing thing.
Yeah, so for sure we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The Buddha never taught non-thinking; he taught right thinking. And we have to understand that it's not because we think a lot that we are intelligent and productive. And so we would all gain in learning how to cultivate more of this open presence so that we can regulate our nervous system and cultivate a more calm and conscious thinking. So we think more when we want to think, and we think more about what we want to think to actually help us in life. That's a skill. So before working, before making big decisions, before having this difficult conversation with our partner or friend, we would all benefit from regulating our nervous system by cultivating more presence. A lot of people like to do this with the breath, where they just feel the sensations of the breath naturally coming in and out. You can also open up to all your bodily sensations, or you can also just open up to all sounds, make your mind big, make your mind light, open up your peripheral vision so you're more in presence, less in survival. When you do this, you regulate your nervous system and you're able to produce more beautiful thoughts. So you may know that when before a musician plays his or her instrument, he or she first tunes his or her instrument. And so those mindfulness tools, they help tune our nervous system so that we can produce more harmonious thoughts. And there are a lot of scientific studies on how a mindfulness practice helps improve our cognitive function, learn better at school, perform better at work, and so on. So it's because I say this because a lot of people ask, yeah, but in the real world, you have to plan, you have to think, and how will you do that if you're always in the present moment? And that's a great
Right.
question, but there is a great answer to that, which is as you do those practices, your thoughts, the quality of your thoughts increase.
Just in terms of what the best therapist as a person or best person to be in a relationship is to be somebody that's present, is listening, is open. And I think having worked in the mental health area for many years, I think the nicest thing anybody has ever said or is something like, wow, you're the first person where I felt heard me or listened to me, and
Yeah.
you say, you think, wow, what kind of a place or environment did they come from?
Yes.
And one of the most important things for anybody, and what I always teach is collaboration, which I'm doing with Promise now. Collaboration is so important, and the ability to be present, relational, to be helpful to yourself, to others. It's sort of a give and take thing. But in collaboration, you're allowing yourself to get outside of your own narrow thinking and brain and take in things beyond yourself, which mainly from another person. There's a downside of that, as we're finding out now in politics, that if you carefully choose your collaborators, so it's just reinforcing the same stuff, then you're sort of stuck in that. Promise, maybe you can give a little example of what might be part of the program. And I guess the CSM, I mean, it's all interrelated, but an example of like one of the practices anybody can do.
Wonderful, thank you. So, in the Daily Awareness Empowerment Program, there is a short morning routine with 10 minutes of sitting meditation. Of course, 10 minutes is just a suggestion. It's just the idea is for all of the practices, it is to aim for short, to aim low, to keep it short, but to make it a daily habit. So sitting meditation, and then you have some Hindu squats and Hindu push-ups, which are a great whole body workout. With just two exercises, you work your strength, your mobility, and cardiovascular fitness. So it's a great way to wake up the body, get stronger, get ready for the day, increase your mood. So just these two things, a bit of meditation and a bit of exercise as a morning routine. And then during the day, you have six general guidelines. Whole food, plant-based diets before 7 p.m. No intoxicants, meaning no drugs, alcohol. Meaningful human connections, nature exposure, mindfulness, which is the art of living more in the present moment with this open awareness, and mental nourishment, which is how we consume the media, how we feed our mind, also very important. And then at night, you have 10 minutes of swinging Qigong, which is a great exercise to relax the body, help the energy flow throughout our body, and regulate our nervous system before sleep. And then being in bed by 10 p.m., just to make sure we get enough sleep at night. So again, short morning routine, sitting meditation, Hindu squats and Hindu push-ups. During the day, general guidelines, whole food plant-based diet, meaningful human connections, nature, mindfulness, mental nourishment, and at night, some arm swinging qigong and being in bed by 10 p.m. And it's not, to have those amazing practices, which again are all do-it-yourself, simple, free, backed up by science, holistically effective, is great, but it's still just half of the program. The other half is how do we actually implement it in our busy lives. And so there are a lot of things that we do that stem from behavioral science, coaching, and so on that increase our odds of success. And I'll maybe name a few here. First is when possible, we learn as a group because it's more fun. We feel supported. We encourage each other. Another one is I will encourage every person who takes the DWEP to clarify their wellness why. Why is it important for them to take care of themselves? Maybe it's because they want to suffer less. They have this chronic condition. They want to decrease the symptoms. Maybe they want to be healthier, happier. What would that look like for them specifically? Maybe they want to have a better presence for their loved ones. Maybe they want to have more energy, more focus for their meaningful projects. Maybe they want to be more resilient to face personal or societal challenges. Or maybe they want to inspire other people to take care of themselves. Those are six, typical reasons why people would want to take care of themselves. But it's important that each person knows why he or she wants to take care of themselves, something that really gives them energy and inspires them to actually uh, interact with those wellness practices. Another
Yeah.
thing we do is each participant sets their own SMART goals. And some of you might have heard about this. SMART is an acronym which stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. Because so many of us, we set the kind of goals that set us up for failure because they're either too big or too abstract or too unrealistic. And here I really, really encourage every participant to set small goals that they know they can do. It doesn't matter if it's ridiculously low. What I say is if you only do 1 minute of sitting meditation a day, it's great because 1 minute is always 100% times more than 0 minutes. So if this is this 1 minute that you need to just get going, set a daily habit, build the momentum, then that's the best goal you can set for yourself. And then it becomes easier to do a bit more and more.
Yeah. Promise is just a superb teacher. And he's done a lot of background research. He wasn't, he spent his time wisely. The exercise part of his program has great depth in the Western tradition. I mean, a lot of the most exercise teachers or physical therapists use a lot of they part or use a lot of these an exercise from the East in their programs for cardiovascular work, for strengthening, for balance. I'm not talking about, mental balance too. I'm talking about physical balance. People. The mindfulness is a part of a lot of modern therapies and work. One thing I love about it, I did some writing about CT, which I studied with some of the main teachers of that, and
Oh, really?
it's very, and basically I think it's all from a lot from depths of Eastern teachings and West. But it's one of those popular therapies. You want to mention a little bit about that? I know you've about ACT.
Yeah, ACT. Stephen C.
You,
Hayes, the founder or originator, is keen on having us calling it. So it's acceptance and commitment training when it's practiced by one's own, or like taught in a coaching corporate context. But ACT also stands for acceptance and commitment therapy when it's proposed in a psychotherapeutic context. I won't go into detail in the relationship between Eastern practices and ACT. I'm actually writing a series of articles this right now. But basically, what's so interesting about this system is that it's really evidence based. They spent, I think, 15 or 20 years researching what are the parameters that influence most happiness, our mental health. And they identified six. Four of them have to do with the quality of our presence. So they summarize it in acceptance, which is like accepting presence. And two have to do with living a life that's aligned with our values, a meaningful life, purposeful life. So, so it's a theoretical model that's able to predict very accurately how well a person can do in their life. And they also teach those as skills. So six skills to shift these parameters toward more happiness. So one is presence, so ability to connect with the present moment, just to hear what we hear, feel what we feel, see what we see. Another one is acceptance. So this open, non-judgmental, equanimous attitude toward the present moment. Another one is cognitive diffusion, which is a term they coined. The idea is that by default, our mind is very fused into the content of our thought, meaning and our sensations, meaning we take our thoughts and sensation as something extremely real, and we perceive the present moment as depicted by them. While cognitive diffusion, it means we cognitively step back from thoughts and feelings, and we just see them as parts of the present moment. They come, they go, they are life, and they're just a small part of our experience. And so it means that the thought or the sensation can still be there, but our experience of them is very different. An analogy is, let's say we're drowning in the middle of a river. So it's all dark, we're panicking, we push ourselves to the surface, we breathe, we go back to the shore. Now we're sitting on the dry shore and we look at the same river. The river is the exact same river, but our experience of it is totally different. In the same way, when we are very fused to our thoughts and feelings, our experience of them is totally different. But when our mind is more open, more present, we are much safer. So that's cognitive diffusion. And the last acceptance skill is seeing ourselves as the observer, meaning we identify less with the content of our experience and more with this open space of awareness. And that's extremely therapeutic. So one way to look at it is that those four acceptance skills, against presence, acceptance, cognitive diffusion, and identifying with the observer, we can see them as the four facets of an effective mindfulness practice. So this is also extremely enriching for people who've learned about mindfulness meditation through the traditional lens. It's also extremely helpful for them. So it's a dialogue.
let
Both
me
science and tradition can enrich each other.
let me just interject here. It's an important thing that all this, I guess, could be called self-help work versus, going to someone. I know earlier in Promise's life, which he shared with you, he went to somebody and they were very limited actually in scope of what they had to help or teach him with. So Promise had to take things in his own hands and study yourself. We always advocate that if you find a teacher, to be careful that it's the right one. But anyway, this is in the category of how, if you know you're in a terrible spot or situation, even terrifying, at some point you got to get off the couch. Oh, that's a funny one too, because people used to go to psychoanalysts and lay on the couch for time. But so anyway, and we're going to have to wrap up. But it's funny with Promise's talents and abilities. I mean, he could be a famous university professor or something. But then, if he went into that thing, he would again be in kind of a little bit of a constricted environment. So I'm hoping we'll continue to see more of him and his
I'm a high
programs.
school dropout, by the way.
Well, that is part of your journey. Also, I want to say at the end that, I've looked at, and actually I've added a few more practices to my program. So I'm hoping to collaborate a little bit with Promise. So maybe he'll take some of the things that I've developed. And I have to brag that my program is well proven, because I'm 81 years old now and still doing all the things I love to do. And so, any final words, Promise? Oh, and Promise, tell them about your Substack and maybe some programs you are doing.
Thank you. Yes, I just want to go back quickly on what you just said about self-help, which I call empowerment. That's what I promote, a self-care centered approach to mental health. And I see that's what you've been doing. You've been taking good care of yourself and you empower your patients to take good care of themselves. That's really what I want to promote. If there are any psychiatrists, therapists watching this, I really encourage them to learn about all of those practices. There are things that are science-based, simple, free, that you can do every day that really do make a difference in your mental health and also in the quality of your presence, because as Dr. Pax just said, the quality of our presence and our listening is already very therapeutic. But first, we have to take care of ourselves. We cannot give what we don't have. If we don't have inner space, if we don't have presence, if we don't have love, it's going to be hard to give this to patients. And then I really hope all mental health professionals listening to this can adopt a self-care centered approach to mental health, meaning that as we use all of the beautiful tools they have to help their patients, their clients, they also want to make them their number one priority, that each of their patients is empowered with the knowledge of self-care. So yeah, thank you, Dr. Parks. If anyone is interested about my work, they can go to mentalhealthrevolution.org, mentalhealthrevolution.org. There's a guide to the Daily Wellness Empowerment Program. There's a guide to Central Story Training, and those are great places to start.
Thank you. And I thank all of our listeners, and to be open and some actions with your own, and try to find, if you need a good teacher that can, on your journey, a positive influence, and as a collaborator with you to meet your full life goals and have a happy journey. Thank you.
All of my content is for free. There's an app that we're developing so people can learn everything on their own for free. But for those who do feel the need to be accompanied, I also offer individual and group coaching, both online and in person.
Very good. Again, thank everybody, and thank you, Promise.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too.